Q2193, which is true regarding flight operations in Class B airspace. A. The pilot in command must hold a private pilot certificate with an instrument rating. B. The pilot in command must hold at least a student pilot certificate. C. The aircraft must be equipped with an ATC transponder and altitude reporting. The correct answer is C. The aircraft must be equipped with an ATC transponder and altitude reporting. Additional details regarding flight operations in Class B airspace include transponder requirement. All aircraft operating in Class B airspace are required to have an operable Mode C transponder, which provides altitude information to Air Traffic Control, ATC. This requirement helps ATC to accurately monitor and separate traffic within the airspace. Altitude reporting. Along with the transponder, the aircraft must also have altitude reporting capability. This allows ATC to receive accurate altitude information from the aircraft. Communication and clearance. Pilots must establish and maintain two-way radio communication with ATC while operating in Class B airspace. They must receive a specific clearance from ATC to enter and operate within the airspace. Pilot certification. There is no specific requirement for the pilot in command to hold a private pilot certificate with an instrument rating. However, pilots operating in Class B airspace must possess the appropriate pilot certificate and any necessary endorsements for the type of flight operation being conducted, e.g., VFR or IFR. It is essential for pilots to familiarize themselves with the specific operating procedures, communication frequencies, and airspace boundaries for the Class B airspace they intend to operate in. This information can be found in relevant aeronautical charts, the Aeronautical Information Manual, AM, and other official publications. 2043, which is true regarding flight operations to a satellite airport without an operating control tower within Class C airspace. A. Prior to entering that airspace, a sport pilot must contact the FSS. B. Prior to entering that airspace, a sport pilot must contact the primary airport tower. C. Prior to entering that airspace, a sport pilot must receive the appropriate logbook endorsement. The correct answer is C. Prior to entering that airspace, a sport pilot must receive the appropriate logbook endorsement. Additional details regarding flight operations to a satellite airport within Class C airspace include logbook endorsement. Sport pilots must receive a specific logbook endorsement from an authorized instructor before operating to a satellite airport within Class C airspace. This endorsement demonstrates that the pilot has received the necessary training and is knowledgeable about the procedures and requirements for operating in Class C airspace. Communication. Sport pilots must establish two-way radio communication with the appropriate Air Traffic Control, ATC, facility for the Class C airspace. This communication is essential for receiving clearances and instructions from ATC while operating in the airspace. Communication frequency. Sport pilots should monitor and communicate on the appropriate ATC frequency assigned to the Class C airspace they are operating within. The specific frequency can be obtained from aeronautical charts, NOTAMs, notices to airmen, or other official sources. Traffic pattern. Pilots should follow the recommended traffic pattern and entry procedures for the satellite airport within Class C airspace. These procedures are typically outlined in the Aeronautical Information Manual, AM, and other publications. It is crucial for sport pilots to understand and comply with the specific procedures and requirements for operating to a satellite airport within Class C airspace. These requirements are in place to ensure safe and efficient operations within the controlled airspace environment. 2049. What designated airspace associated with an airport becomes inactive when the control tower at that airport is not in operation? A. Class D, which then becomes Class C. B. Class D, which then becomes Class E. C. Class B. The correct answer is B. Class D airspace. Class D airspace is designated around airports with an operating control tower. When the control tower is not in operation, typically during non-tower hours. The Class D airspace reverts to Class E airspace. Class E airspace. Class E airspace is the controlled airspace that extends from the surface or a specific altitude upward. When the control tower is not in operation, the airspace within the former Class D airspace boundary becomes Class E airspace. Operating requirements. In Class E airspace, pilots are not required to establish two-way radio communication with air traffic control, ATC, as they would in Class D airspace. However, pilots must still comply with any specific requirements or procedures outlined for that particular Class E airspace area. It's important for pilots to review the applicable regulations, charts, and notices to airmen, NOTAMs, to determine the specific changes in airspace classification and any associated procedures when the control tower at an airport is not in operation. 2052. The purpose of military training routes. Charted as VFR military training routes, VR, and IFR military training routes, or on sectional charts, is to ensure the greatest practical level of safety for all flight operations and to allow the military to conduct A. Low-altitude, high-speed training. B. Radar instrument training. C. Air-to-air refueling training. The correct answer is A. The purpose of military training routes, MTRs, whether charted as VFR military training routes, VR, or IFR military training routes, IR, is to ensure the highest possible level of safety for all flight operations and to facilitate specific types of military training. Among the options provided, the primary purpose of MTRs is to allow the military to conduct low-altitude, high-speed training. Military aircraft often require specialized training that involves flying at low altitudes and high speeds. MTRs are designated corridors within the airspace where military aircraft can safely conduct such training activities. These routes help segregate military training activities from other types of civilian air traffic, reducing the risk of conflicts and ensuring the safety of all aircraft involved. While the military may conduct other types of training, such as radar instrument training or air-to-air refueling training, the primary purpose of MTRs is specifically to facilitate low-altitude, high-speed training. This allows military pilots to practice maneuvers and operations that are essential to their mission readiness and operational effectiveness. 2056. Who is responsible for collision avoidance in a military operations area, MOA? A. Each pilot. B. ATC controllers. C. Military controllers. The correct answer is A. The responsibility for collision avoidance in a military operations area, MOA, rests with each pilot. When operating within an MOA, it is the individual pilot's responsibility to be vigilant and maintain awareness of other aircraft in the area to avoid potential collisions. MOAs are designated airspace areas where military training activities, such as aerial combat maneuvers or live-fire exercises, take place. These activities may involve high-speed aircraft, unusual flight patterns, and varying altitudes. Therefore, pilots operating within an MOA need to exercise caution and be prepared for the presence of military aircraft engaged in training operations. While air traffic controllers, ATC, provide services and separation of aircraft in controlled airspace, their responsibility for collision avoidance extends to other airspace classes, such as Class B, Class C, or Class D. However, within an MOA, pilots are primarily responsible for maintaining separation and avoiding collisions by actively scanning for other aircraft, adhering to prescribed procedures, and communicating their intentions. It's important for pilots to be familiar with the specific procedures and requirements associated with operating within an MOA to ensure safe and effective flight operations.